This video is brought to you by Captivating History. From the founding of their capital in the 12th century to their untimely demise in the 16th century, the Incas went from an indistinguishable South American tribe to become the rulers of one of the largest empires in the world. They did all this without a formal written language, currency, or the help of large draft animals. So how did this small tribe rise to become the most powerful in South America? The Incas did not write down their history. Instead, it was passed down orally through stories and legends. While the Inca language, Quechua, is still spoken in Peru today, much of their oral history is thought to have been lost during the Spanish conquest of South America. There have been some tantalizing breakthroughs about the Inca quipu, knotted cords believed to be for record-keeping. Recent studies suggest that the quipu could contain long-lost Inca myths and stories stored phonetically within their knots. However, until the quipu code can be cracked, these stories remain elusive. Most of what we know about the ancient Incas is from the records of the conquistadors and archaeological evidence. Like many ancient civilizations, the origins of the Incas are shrouded in myths. Some surviving versions of their origin myth recount that the Incas were made by Inti, the sun god, who sent his son Manco Capac to Earth through caves in the village of Pacari Tampu to become the first Inca emperor. The legend states that Manco Capac and his siblings emerged from the middle of 3 caverns and led 10 groups of people who came from the caves on either side. The new tribe then built their capital, which they called Cuzco. It is thought that the 4th emperor, Mayta Capac, started the expansion of the Incas, raiding neighboring villages and perhaps introducing a tributary system to the defeated tribes. The next emperor, Capac Yupanqui, took the Inca influence outside the Cuzco Valley. The 8th emperor, Viracocha Inca, was the first to establish permanent garrisons amongst the conquered people to secure dominance over the other tribes. Some historians believe that the Inca could easily expand their rule because their capital, Cuzco, was located in an area that connected 2 previous strong empires, one based at the city of Tiwanaku and another called the Wari. This placement meant that a great deal of infrastructure was already in place, of which the Incas could take advantage. Oral history, recorded by the Spanish, suggests that it was the 9th emperor, Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui, who started the vast empire expansion in 1438. Before he rose to power, he played a pivotal role when the CHANKA attacked Cuzco. The current ruler, Pachacuti's father, Viracocha Inca, and his chosen successor fled the city instead of defending it. Pachacuti led a small band of warriors to protect the city. Legend has it that a vision sent by Inti inspired Pachacuti, and when he called on the gods to help, rocks were transformed into Inca warriors. Pachacuti's successful defeat of the invading Chankas won him the support of his people and the admiration of his father. He became a joint ruler until his father's death, when he continued as the sole sovereign. Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui's name means "he who remakes the world." He certainly lived up to this title. He ordered Cuzco to be rebuilt and strengthened, and some stories say that he completely demolished the city for it to be rebuilt in the shape of a puma. Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui went on to conquer large areas and subjugated the powerful tribes of Chanka and Chimu. The Incas called their empire Tawantinsuyu, meaning 4 regions together, as they had unified the regions of Antisuyu, Chinchaisuyu, Kuntisuyu, and Kulasuyu. Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui was the first Inca emperor to force large groups of conquered people to resettle to solidify his rule. By displacing ethnic groups, he disrupted the ability to organize any uprisings. While the Inca have been consolidating their power for centuries, most of their expansion happened in a relatively short time. Many consider Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui to be the greatest ruler of the Inca, and he is credited with the formation of Tawantinsuyu. But his death in 1471 was only 21 years before Columbus's famous voyage, and just over 70 years before the death of the last official Inca emperor. This timeline only makes the expansion of the Incas even more impressive when you consider the short period in which they gained total dominance. The Incas were effective in their development since they didn't just use brute force to grow their empire. Military conquest was usually the last step in their quest for domination. First, they employed diplomacy. They would reach out to neighboring territories, negotiating amicable relationships to enable expansion. They would form political alliances, organize strategic marriages, and exchanged gifts to try to win over the targeted tribe. If diplomacy failed, they would threaten military action, followed by an outright invasion if needed. However, once the Incas had conquered a tribe, they were treated relatively respectfully. Local rulers were often left in place, and dominated cultures were assimilated into the Inca way of life instead of being destroyed altogether. Once the Incas had subjugated a tribe, they were kept under control in many ways, one of which was taking advantage of the shared religious beliefs of the tribes. Many South American tribes, including the Inca, practiced ancestor worship through mummification. Upon death, the emperor would be mummified and continue living as he had before. He retained his palaces, riches, and servants and was paraded behind the living emperor at festivals. But this was not just true for the Inca emperors. The Inca knew the importance of such practices and honored the most revered mummies of their subjects by taking them to Cuzco for worship. In this way, they then controlled the tribe's link to their heritage. They also capitalized on their origin myths as the ancestors of the sun god, interlinking religion with royalty. The Incas levied a tax on the subjugated tribes as another form of control. However, this tax was not paid in money but in service to the empire. Although they were rich in silver and gold, the Inca did not need money since the state took care of the population's basic needs. The service required as tribute could be agricultural, working on communal infrastructure, joining the army, or offering people for sacrificial purposes. While many living under Inca rule may have thought of rebelling, the Incas did a great deal to facilitate the lives of their subjects. Probably the most impressive feat was the Inca road network. Engineers transformed individual road systems into extraordinary interconnected highways measuring over 25,000 miles. These road systems were an integral part of the Inca Empire, as they allowed for quick and coherent communication between the capital and its outposts. However, these roads were strictly kept for government and military use, and the workers of the Inca Empire would have to gain special permission to walk them. In addition to roads, the Incas were incredibly adept at farming and preserving food. They cultivated around 70 different native crops and stored them in buildings known as colcas. Knowing that stored food is integral to sustaining a large society throughout times of war or crop failure, they designed and built the colcas to store specific crops. Colcas were built into the side of hills to benefit from the cooler temperatures. They employed drainage channels to divert water that might rot the food, and each colca was a different shape depending on the crop that it stored. Circular structures housed corn, which were often stored in clay pots after being removed from the husk. Rectangular colcas were used for root vegetables. Tubers were usually kept in clay pots or stored with dried Andean mint to deter insects and worms. Since the Inca did not have large draft animals to help them transport substantial amounts of food, it was practical to store the food where it was grown and distribute it as needed. Although the Incas had a monarchy, they also had a system of government that involved other officials. It is estimated that over 40,000 people worked in the Inca government, collecting taxes and organizing the subjects. At the top of the Inca power pyramid was the Sapa Inca, the emperor. Everyone underneath worked for the Sapa Inca, although the state would look after the people during tough times and retirement. The government kept the people housed, clothed, and fed, but their lives were tightly controlled to the point that they could be described as enslaved. The Inca had strict social and political organizations that governed their society. There were three main classes in Inca society, the top class being royalty. It was made up of the nuclear family of the Sapa Inca plus some extended family. The second class was the nobility, which included any remaining relatives of the Sapa Inca, priests, and those who served in high government positions. While the Sapa Inca was usually a descendant of the previous ruler, royal nobles could influence the decision who could be the successor, which, unlike in Western traditions, did not fall directly to the eldest son. The lowest class was made up of everyone else in the empire. This group contained the peasant people called the Alyu Hatun Runa and the Mitimes, groups of people sent to colonize new regions and teach new customs to the people native to the area. This class also contained the Yanaconas, who were servants of the empire, many of which were prisoners. The political structure of the Incas was more intricate than that of the social system. Directly underneath the Sapa Inca was the Imperial Council, usually made up of around 8 people who had direct contact with the emperor. The Incaparantin, A viceroy, usually a relative of the Sapa Inca, was the emperor's closest advisor. Another top official was the high priest, called the Wilak Umu. This position was a lifelong one and held power over all the shrines, temples, the appointment of priests, and could also act as a field marshal in times of war. Since the Inca Empire was so vast, the Sapa Inca had to rely on an extensive network of local officials and administrators to oversee the running of day-to-day life. There was a ruler for each of the 4 regions of Tehuantinsuyu, who were usually relatives of the Sapa Inca. Each area was then broken down into provinces that each had a governor. Each governor had 2 officials, called Caracas, who in turn had 2 officials of their own. Every official had 2 officials who were directly underneath them. The system of the Caracas meant that every 8 to 10 citizens had an official that oversaw them, which gave the Incas the utmost control over their population. By the time Francisco Pizarro arrived in Panama in 1530, the diseases brought by the Spanish had already been responsible for the deaths of Emperor Huayna Capac. Subsequent power struggles meant that Pizarro and his men could take advantage of a volatile situation to facilitate their own dominance. Ultimately, it could be said that the success of the Inca was also its downfall. They ran their society very tightly, and some common people resented their autonomous control and aided the invading Spanish. The Inca royalty was so assured of their power that they may have underestimated the small Spanish army. Although disease undoubtedly helped the Spanish dominate the Inca, this proud empire may have been a victim of its own astounding success. To learn more about the Incas, check out our book, Incas, a captivating guide to the history of the Inca Empire and civilization. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Also, grab your free mythology bundle ebook while it's still available. All links are in the description. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.